Oh, no! Oh, Maurice. Yeah, you can't do that. You can't put your snot on the camera. No, Maurice, come here. Yeah. Sorry. Come on. We love you, but we don't want your nose slime on the camera. Okay? Alright, buddy. So here we have Simon's other guitar. Well, one of his other guitars. And this is a Tokai. Chinese one, but it looks quite vintage. Here I have it on a nice balance because he's moved the strap button from here to here, and it does balance really well as a result. Morris, now I need you to come down. Come on, there's a good boy. Oh, no, there's a good boy. Da, da, da. Now I haven't played this at all, so it'd be interesting to know what it sounds like. Ooh. So what are we going to do with this thing? Well, I'm not going to play it loud because it's getting later, but we are going to give it a setup and also replace the volume pots for logarithmic volume pots. Oh no, I see what he's saying. Clean. Very clean. These are custom pickups and I've forgotten the name of them, but they're custom hand wound. But this is quite an interesting guitar. It's upside down. Now, okay, what do we know about this guitar? It is very clean. It's interesting. These are like single coils. Ooh, very clean sounding. Interesting. Bit of choking out or weird. Well, I don't know. This would be very nice to play. I mean, I'd like to try this at full tilt, but I can't. So. I never remember that riff. See, that's really slightly surprised there, because that's a very low output pickup. And that goes, actually still drives the rectifier setting really well. Goes from, yeah, it goes kind of completely drops off from 2 down to nothing. Hardly any, it's not a linear, sorry, it's not a logarithmic audio tape. Okay, well, kind of interesting, because I expected it to sound worse on the rectifier type distortion crunch setting, and it actually sounded very good. So I sort of get a hint of what Simon likes about those pickups, and I've forgotten the name of them, but they are custom boutique-y thing. They were sort of demo models or prototype models, I think. So anyhow, we'll come back to playing it at the end. But so the thing I'm going to do here is going to do a setup on here, fit some new strings. I'm going to slack off these tuners a little bit, and this has a nice leather pick guard with also a leather truss rod cover. So we're just really going to do some setup, adjust the action, and in doing so what will probably happen is we'll hit some more uneven frets. There is an issue with the nut, I can feel already. The frets are pretty low. Ooh, I'm not used to this shape. The frets are quite low, so we have to be very, very careful with the fret leveling. An issue I noticed straight away is that this nicely fitted nut, which somebody's put on and hand cut, it's a kind of natural bone, unbleached bone thing. It's already probably just slightly too low on a couple of these frets, which means if we take the action down on in the bridge department, what we're going to get is probably not only buzzing frets down here, but we're also going to get start buzzing on the first fret down here. And it'd be a shame to have to change it, but I think if we have to make it play, we have to, and that's the end of that. Okay, so we're just under 2 mils there, so it's pretty high on the bass side. So I expect we're going to hear some buzz. See what we got over this side. We're just under 1.5 on that side, and just over 1.5 on this side. So this is where we'll probably hear the first fret grounding out. Still a bit high, 1.5. Okay, 1.25. 1.25 is probably a bit low, if the truth be known. Right, let's get a note again. I'll try that. Ooh, got to tune it. Hear it now. So, okay, we're practically buzzing out on the first fret, so we have to accept that we're going to have to either replace the nut or live with it. Whoever's fitted it seems to have either resined it into place, or looks like put maybe some filler of some kind to kind of blend it in, so it may protest and not want to come out. I wouldn't be surprised. So at the action that I wanted at, oh, let me just check the relief, which is some. That's enough to be going on with. It's funny that I expected the bass strings to be, or the bass frets to be the more problematic ones, but it turns out it's on the treble side, and it's it's a little bit. Oh, there's a big chip out of the fret there. Big chunk right there on the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th fret. Backwards choking. So the problem is along this edge, top edge here on the treble strings. So that is the way things go. Unfortunately, we're going to have to lose this. If we don't lose the nut, what have we got? Sort of slightly offends my sense of something to leave that low, but there's quite a big price to be pay for wow, those are stiff. A big price to pay for making that adjustment, sorry, for leaving it in place, and if we were going to replace it, there is a big price to pay in terms of knocking this nut out of here and breaking the otherwise nice seal. But you can hear it zinging, sitaring, unfortunately. Feels great to play. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the fret leveling, and we may take a tiny fraction more off this. This is a judgment call, this one, right? Normally I would remove a nut like this, but this has been really carefully resined into place, and somebody's finished over the top of it, and to take this out would be to crack all this lacquer around here. So I'm going to do something which I possibly wouldn't normally do, is I'm going to do a little repair in here. So I'm going to widen these slots a little bit because they're unnecessarily deep, and when I get to this one I'm going to put a little bit of the super glue and bone powder repair in here, and I'm going to raise this action up by a fraction. And in fact these first two, and we're going to keep this original nut. And the decision to do that is principally because it's such a good well fitted one, and it's so original to this guitar, and I think it would be quite a big deal to remove it. So let's do the, oh god, these tuners are a bit worn out actually. They work, but they are a bit, they're not exactly stiff. Well, they are stiff, but it's it could be the gears that are a bit dried up inside. I wonder if there's any way of lubricating them. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm taking these off so I can mark up the frets with a permanent marker to do fret leveling. But after I've done that, what I'm going to do is just do a little bit of that repair in that slots 1 and 2, and then we'll cut them back. Now, you know, normally people said to me, oh, why didn't you do a repair on that instead of replacing the nut? And of course there's some people would say, well, that's not a good permanent situation, and actually most of the people I've ever heard talk about this say it's a good permanent solution. It would take quite a long time for a string to wear down the bone and superglue mix. It's a pretty good paste, or pretty good cement, you might say. But you know, typically some people don't like the idea of having a repair on their nut slot rather than the original. Rather than you know, have the string sitting. I can't even see where this has been glued in. It's been very thoroughly fitted. Yeah, some people just don't like the idea of having that sort of repair and feel that it's not good. Now, like I said, it's really much stronger than you'd think. Sorry about this view a minute. It's much stronger than you'd think. So I'm just going to clear the way. The thing about doing a superglue repair is you want to get, you think you're going to mask everything off and protect everything from any glue. Is this actually stuck down, or is it free to come off? It's free to come off. But the problem is superglue kind of wicks underneath anything it comes into contact with, so realistically you've got these really deep slots. It's unnecessarily deep. It's nice and shiny, that's the only thing about it which I'm loath to alter, but what I will alter is the nature of the slot in here, because we don't want any gripping, and bit of paint there. We don't want any gripping, so we want the thing to just be slightly V-shaped above the string bottom, so that we can be fairly confident there's no gripping of the string. Now the best way to ensure that is to, of course, cut it right down so that there's barely any material above the string, or the bottom of where the string sits in the nut. But in this case it's quite deep, so we'd have to take a load of the nut off, which again would be a little bit, God, there's tons to come off there. Maybe we should do this actually. I don't want to bust up the sides, but let's do this. Let's take more of this off, because it's completely unnecessary. And what it does is it basically just runs the risk of the string catching, or creates a greater likelihood of the string getting caught with friction in the slot. A very hard bone, this actually. So it's like horn or something. So you'd be surprised how little material you actually need above these strings by the time we finish this. It'll look very flat indeed. And for some people that may look a little bit peculiar, but the reality is you don't need any of that material above the where the string sits, and any material, God, it's hugely high, any material above that point is actually counterproductive. Doesn't benefit you in any way, and it simply increases the likelihood of the string binding in the slot. Now, like I say, the only thing that might look odd is the shape of it, to the traditionalist, if you like. So when you do this, you have to just be confident that you're holding the file in such a way that it's not going to strike the headstock paintwork or the frets or anything like that. So it's a firm hand. Tons and tons of it's coming off here, really, and we've actually still got a way deep slot. I mean, it's a hugely deep slot to work with. I mean, if we do stop taking material off here, then we really do still need to cut down or widen out the slots so they're not straight-sided, because if they're straight-sided, all that happens is you just create friction. Now you can, when you're doing something like this, you can polish this off again as much or as little as you want. You know, if a shiny looks important, then you just go get finer and finer with your files, and you can sand it off and polish it out if you want. So what I'm doing here is I'm just now widening a little bit again, seeing how deep this thing is still in the nut. It's way deep. I'm being careful not to hit the bottom of the slot in any way. I'm just looking at just how much space or how much excess material we've got, and it's a ton. It really is. You can see how much material we're taking away. Eventually, we've just got to make sure that we don't get it to a point where there's so little slot that the string goes sideways, which is not going to be likely here. Oops. Careful. So we could keep on going quite some way. I'm looking at seeing what's down here in this slot. I'm not sure what was used, but I think it was resin at some point to fix this in. Now that's getting quite low down, and if you want to check while you're doing this, just drop the string back in, and now we can see that we can we're getting to the point where we can nearly see the string, but still quite deep. Now, rather than go any further down with this now, we could just carefully widen up this slot now with the V file. You can rock it a little bit side to side, and all we're looking to do is just clear that so it's a little bit open and not gripping the string. And what we're careful to do is not go down any further at this point as well. Okay. Okay. Let's put this back in. It's still relatively deep in the scheme of things. But it's wow. We could widen some more, This is where I wish I had magnifying eyes, but I don't. Because I want to, let's see if I'll throw a bit of light on top of this as well. Just want to be very clear when I'm widening this out now. Avoid the front edge, I don't want to lower it any further, but I want to get to close to the bottom of it as I go down like this. Those wider ones are okay. God, they are still very deep. So it's amazing how far down these actually were. But they do look a lot less constricted and bound in. They're still at the same height as before. So I'm going to switch to the smoother side of the file for a minute and just do a little bit more here. Careful not to rub off too much of the got some bits of metal stuck in here. Don't want to rub off too much of the pen, but I can always add that again. I should have perhaps cleaned out the teeth on this file first. And then again, if you want to make with some sandpaper, round it off a bit at the back. Can go with a lighter grade. I think that was, I don't know what that was. This is 240. And then we can just concentrate on the back a little bit. We'll get some 600. Which we could do as long as is needed to shine it up. Okay, that's not a bad thing. Now, if that's a bit sharp at the front, we can get our three-sided file with a safe edge and just use it to just take off very sharp front edge, and so it's a little bit less scratchy on the hand. Right, so just a couple of last little checks here before. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that repair with Superglue and bone dust, and it's really only these two I need to do it on. Let's just double check the G while we're at it. Yeah, that's actually okay. Right, so this is how we do it. We get the bone dust. Like I said, when you're doing this, you can get trick yourself into thinking that putting down some masking tape around the fretboard and the back end of the headstock here will somehow protect you. My experience is it won't, and it's a bit mad because what happens is you basically get the superglue wicks its way underneath the paper and actually makes more of a mess than if you just do it by eye right now like this, and take the risk of spotting it if and when if it spills. So what you can have to hand is, if you wish, to have some rags and some debonder if you get seriously into trouble. Now you also want some super glue, but we need some thin stuff, and we don't want to, certainly don't want to glue it from the bottle onto the thing itself. We want to apply it very carefully. So we're going to use some cocktail sticks for that. Okay, and we have some bone dust here. So this is going to form a similar colour material, because when you put the glue on it, it stops being so white and it becomes a bit more yellowy. So the trick with this is to get the dust, basically drop the dust into the slot like this and pack it in a bit so you know that you've got it all the way in, and tempted to brush it away, but then I'll mess it up. So then we chuck out a bit of glue, and then we come at it with our cocktail sticks. Okay, now I'm just going to put it on there and gently, very gently, move it around and let it do its soaking in of its own free will. And with a bit of luck, so we haven't gone anywhere past the boundary where we wanted it. Doesn't matter if it gets on the top of the nut, we can scrape that off with sandpaper. Right, we just want that to get it into the slot, and there's our little repair. And we haven't done anything to protect anything, we've just trusted our dexterity. Now sometimes this doesn't soak in very well, so it's not entirely easy to know if it has or if it hasn't, but this actually feels like it's hardening up pretty well. But you can give it a little helping hand if you feel that it's not sinking in. And worst comes to the worst, if you think it needs a bit of extra, you can go back to your bone dust department and just tip on some on the top. Now of course what you'll get is sort of some stuff sticking up. And the other thing you can do, of course, is you can use some Accelerant, and this is glue boost, so it's pretty expensive stuff. Now I'm going to just hold a piece of cloth over there while I do that, because it does get over the paintwork and doesn't necessarily like that. So I don't need my rescue thinners, debonder, and there's my repaired stuff. Okay, now that's pretty much completely gummed up the nut slot, which is what we have to do. There's no way around it. It's the only way we're going to come back down from there to a workable action. Ow. So personally, that's still a little bit tacky on top. So we can get the sawdust sandpaper out again, and we can take it back to the top of the nut for starters. I know I've already sanded this back a bit further, but what the heck. Okay, so you can see it's now cleaning up pretty well. From excess stuff on the top is disappearing, and now we're left with just the filled slots, which actually looks pretty tidy from here, and you can see there the two of them are nicely filled in, and that's our repair to work with. Now what we're going to do is going to start by making a couple of cuts with nut slots, and I'm going to use the standard ones I would use for doing the slots on this nut anyway, which is the B and the E. Now it's quite difficult to make a start because it's pretty hard stuff we've got there now. But you want to just make sure your first cut is on the mark, and then you want to just kind of keep working it. Now, quite often I will use the V-notch file to do a bit of sort of manual labour work to get the notch going, because it cuts pretty effectively. So there we go, we've got a slot in the making. Now what I'm going to do while I'm at this, I'm going to just put these back in and take a note, and I'm going to tune everything else up. Now that one's not on its saddle, that's why it's making that noise. Okay, so having done those other strings up, I get a better look at what the other actions are and where I need to go with this one. So I'm going to take it up, take it a pitch, and then move it sideways to do my cutting. So I'm going to go with the 16, which is my B string file for a 11 gauge set. And that's pretty good, it's getting there, not much more to do, and that's very little of a cut, so we don't need to go very far with this tool. Now I'm just measuring this by eye. We could use a feeler gauge, but right now I'm eyeballing it. Tiny bit more, but it's very effective. Doesn't cut quite as nicely as bone, but it does the job, and it compacts down. That's it, spot on. Okay, so now I'm going to make a start mark, and I'm going to use this sharp edge of this V-notch file to make that first mark down here, just to be sure I'm on the line. It's very critical that we get that first swipe down the middle of the slot. That's good. And then we load up. One of the other things about this guitar is that the alignment's a little bit off, so the strings aren't quite central down the neck. It's not the end of the world, and certainly it's not something that Simon's worried about or noticed, so it's not worth fixing. It's kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it principle. But if this was your guitar and you had that alignment and you weren't happy with it, one of the things this would be suitable for is to fit a shallow 3D bridge where you could spread the horizontal alignment to your satisfaction, and it's a very useful. It's not cheap. It's about £40 and maybe some shipping on top, but it's a good solution that prevents you from having to pull up your bridge and move the posts across, which always leaves a visual scar, no matter how well you do it. Now these other strings are quite low. They were low before, and I'm sort of the temptation to kind of balance them up, but I'm nervy of cutting them to so low, really. Just getting this one to perfection, and there we have it. If anything, the G is fractionally higher than all the rest of these, so I'm going to give it... Christ, that chops my fingernails right off. Sometimes a little hook of wire or string is good to use in this situation. Stops this happening. Man-sized nail emery board. There we go. Solve that. Okay, we're going to use our other nut file. We'll just tweak this G. It's going to be a fraction down. A tiny fraction more. You can see I'm not hitting the top front edge of it yet, so a little bit more to go. Still a little bit more to go. Very close. Down a bit more. I think that will be it. It's still up. That's because I haven't taken any off the front edge yet. I'm still working down the middle part. A bit more. Right, that will be enough. Still a bit more. Come on. That'll do. Okay, put those out of the way. 24, 16, 12. Right. Now, just tune this up one more time and then we're ready to fret level. Okay. So now we're going to do the fret leveling, and that'll be it for today. And fret leveling is a good old-fashioned familiar process. So we've got the guitar now with the last fret action that we want. We've got the first fret action that we want finally. And we've got the neck relief the way we want it. And now the job is to very carefully level these frets out. I've lost my correct one. That's the right one. Yep. So we want to tune the rod to match the curve in the neck and then level with that. And we're going to be very, very careful now because these frets are incredibly low anyway, so we don't want to take off any more metal than is absolutely required to make all of these notes play cleanly, and that's the game. And here we go. Now I'm expecting a bit of unevenness around about this treble edge of things, and the frets are pretty low anyway. Okay, so the diagnostic indicators are none, some, quite a bit, little, little, none, little bit, none, little bit, some, quite a bit, none, quite a bit, tiny bit, none, some, little bit, little bit. So we're cutting all the way across, but it's showing us we've got some low frets, notably here. So we've got low fret on 5, 6, 12, and funnily enough 18, no sorry 16, and then we've still got the scratch on fret 18, which we may go some way towards evening out. So I'm going to first of all just check and play through on those to see how that's helped. See, there's the low one. It's not bad. I'm going to go with that. Sometimes in a situation where you've got very old worn frets like this, you don't have the freedom to keep on going, so you have to compromise at certain times, and that might mean it might not be quite as clear where we've got the low fret. The next fret may be just starting to buzz, or zzz as I call it, and whereas in an ideal situation with more fret life, I might want to continue leveling. In a situation like this where the frets are very worn anyway, I don't want to keep hammering them with fret leveling, and I certainly don't want to end up creating something that Simon doesn't recognise the feel of, just for the sake of chasing a very low action that I've set. So you know, it's a trade-off. So again, similar spread of results as I level that, showing me that the same frets are low. Now we really want, now let's see, look, did we get the little gritty bits out? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Can still just feel it there. So that's in the B track, if you like, and we could just work that a tiny bit more, but again, just got to be very cautious that in order to just remove one tiny little accidental chip damage, that we don't end up compromising more of the frets or the overall feel of the fingerboard, to remove a single bit of damage that, you know, really might not be able to be removed. But actually in this case I think we got most of the way there. So next I calibrate on the G track, and as far as I can feel right now things are going well. Not a lot of metal to play with, full stop, but you know, I'm not taking much off in this process, just getting rid of any unevenness that we've got in there. That's a tiny bit too much now. You won't even see the amount that I actually turned that to get a slightly different shape, and that's perfect. Oh god, there goes my fingernails. Okay, G track. And that's one of the things that's very nice about this method of leveling, is that you can drop the strings back in like that and immediately test out the action. I'm going to go back one more time to that first line, just give that a little bit more go, because everything else is going perfectly, and that's just a tiny bit on the, still a bit of unevenness in that. Okay, one or two really uneven frets right there, but we are playing a very low action, so there's a low fret, you see, makes the next one high no matter what we do to it. and then we come down to the fact that if you've got an ultra low fret, which we have, and you look at the action, we're on 1.1, we could try just raising that by a quarter of a turn, if that, and then right. So executive decision is I'm not going to chase that any further because there is a low fret in this sequence and it is going to constantly dictate what it'll create a high spot in front of it. And that's the action is always the action is always basically determined by your lowest of your frets, because they make the next fret effectively high. So when you come across a guitar with a really low fret or two, you have to decide, you have to make a kind of value judgment about whether it's so low that you have to pull it and replace it, or whether you kind of compromise a little bit and raise the action just so you get over that problem. I'm struggling to get this calibrated just right. Now in this case I think we're at the place where I'm going to go 1/10 of a millimetre up on the action rather than to try and continue to level it out, because we'll just be wasting fret metal. So I'm not going to do it. I think this is going to be fine. Fine. Now we move on to the A track and then finally the E. I think we'll go with that and then we'll polish it all out and see just how it plays. It's a tiny bit too curved now. Nice, nice. Good. You can just, when you've done this enough times, you can just tell when you're at the right spot. So we've got about 1.4 millimeters and 1.25. That's pretty low. That's quite good. And you know, there's room there for if there's still a tiny zing where we've got the ultra low fret getting in the way of things, then Simon has the option to just go up a tiny turn on the bridge, maybe a quarter of a turn at most, and probably lift it out of that territory. I'll go for it. My instinct says go for it as is right now, and in the polishing out we'll probably just take a fraction of a thou off, and that will just ease off the remaining zizzing. But again, it's, you know, 1,000 setups done this way. You sort of get a feel for it, obviously. Yeah, low fret as well at this end. beauty. That's really nice. Okay, so next stage on this is to take off these here strings. We'll oh god, this reverse headstock is an absolute pain. We'll take the strings off eventually. Oh, could be here forever doing that. And then we'll mark up the frets again, and then we'll just reprofile them with the fret reprofiling tool, the Stumac thing. These are 10s, so we'll go with 10s again on the restring. But once I've reprofiled the frets, then I'll go off camera, because all I'll do then is spend a bit of time masking off the fingerboard, and then we'll polish it out with 3 different grades of paper, followed up with micromesh set ranging from 1500 grit theoretically. Well, that's apparently not quite the same as the paper grit, but anyway, from 1500 grit through to 12,000, and that will polish it out. I won't restring it yet, because I've got to wait for these logarithmic pots to arrive, so we can get under the into the electrics cavity and fit those. So we'll have to sit this back in its bag with strings off until such time. But we can get the basic stuff done. Okay, now I could keep a set of 10s, but I don't think I will. For sacrificial strings, I'll just take these off and get rid of them. Yeah, it's got a nice feel, this guitar, very much so. I can see why Simon likes it so much. Okay, so the last thing on camera tonight, before I finish up, is to take the frets. Now this is going to be interesting because they're so flat to begin with. I'm going to see how it shows up on the fret recrowning or reprofiling file. It may not work very well on this because it's not really very effective, or so effective on flatter frets. We shall see. We'll have to use the medium side of things. Let's have a look whether it registers. Well, it does, so lo and behold, I can live with that. The ends of these frets have already been quite flattened off, so kind of look like ski ramps. This isn't too bad. I should be able to, yeah, just about. Doggy doggy. Somebody's previously flattened off the ends of these frets quite a lot, so they are kind of literally flattened out as they hit the edge, so I'll do the best I can to restore some shape to them. See, when they're that low, it's kind of riding on the edge of this file, as opposed to, we really want the fret to be kind of riding the edges of the fret, riding inside on the diamond coated edge. But when they're really low, you end up skating across the wood. So we're almost there. Okay, well that's going to be the best I can do in that department. So I'll get rid of some of the dust for a minute, and I'm going to go off camera now, and I will mask it all off and polish it out, probably sometime first thing tomorrow morning. First thing tomorrow, who am I kidding? Midday-ish. And then come back to you then. Me nuts, you make me feel so young. You make me feel the spring has sprung. It has. Something, 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 something individual. I'm currently listening in airplane mode to an audiobook. And I ordinarily wouldn't invite you into this most dreary and aerobic of stages of the setup, but I just thought I'd do it for fun whilst continuing to listen to one of my favourite books to listen to again and again and again and again. And some of you will know why and what it is. Well, when I tell you what it is, some of you know why. It's Bill Bryson's Down Under, his travelogue of Australia, obviously, read by Bill Roberts, who reads probably a majority of Bryson's audiobooks, and for me is actually even more Bill Bryson's correct voice than Bill Bryson himself. He's got a sort of mushy, softer, bearded voice. Terrible prejudice, but anyway, he does have a softer voice. But Bill Roberts has a very good cutting, middly voice, which has a sort of permanent state of satire, hint of satire in his tone, but it's also perfect for cutting through everyday traffic noise and the noise of daily life, which is a pretty good choice for a narrator actually on audiobooks. But I like listening to Bill Bryson in his own voice too, but Bill Roberts is extremely good. So if you've ever read a Bill Bryson that you enjoyed, then Bill Bryson audiobooks are great for listening to again and again and again, as are a couple of Alan Partridge's as well, I have to say. And of course this one, Down Under, is, you know, a sort of marvel, him marvelling at the size and wonder and savagery of the basic Australian continent, but also at the basic decency of the people and their fairness, and the willingness to give everyone a fair go, as he's just talked about just recently. So there we are, the end of the micromesh pile of papers. There's one thing on this guitar that I just want to tweak, and it's this end of the nut. Well, the nut is, as far as I'm concerned, nigh on perfect right now. There's a bit of grime built up on this end of the nut, which I should like to do away with. Just a bit of marker pen or something, or grime, but it'd be nice to get a shot of it so it looks a bit cleaner. It feels like me at the dental hygienist the other week, last week. Steams, come on, we'll take them away. Difficult to do this actually with direct access to the nut, so I can't really do a very good job of it. Okay, so that's the basic, excuse me, basic thingy done. Now, next stage of this guitar, and I will have to switch off my audiobook in a second, but the next stage of this guitar will be to replace the pots, which arrived this morning, which is great because I wanted to get this done before the weekend. So since I'm on camera, said in his stupidly Australian lilt. Since I'm on camera, I'm going to stop the audio bit. I think. Thank you. Right. A couple of weird things this morning. I'm rushing to output a bunch of videos because I'm going over to Mark's later on, en route to pick up my brother, one of my brothers, from the bus station. He's coming down from Manchester to visit our folks who have recently, just a few months ago now, moved down from Coventry to Tavistock. So for Simon it's a bit of a longer haul, whereas it used to be a bus or a train from Manchester to Coventry. Now you've got to get all the way down to Plymouth, which actually is quite a lot longer journey altogether. So it's a bit more onerous for him. But on the plus side, you know, it's some new scenery for him, and we also get to spend a bit more time together because he comes down to visit the folks. So I'm going over to Mark's, and I'm busy uploading videos, and I have a reliable piece of software. I use Final Cut Pro, which is a Mac piece of software. It's very good editing software. However, something happens when I'm burning or outputting the huge size videos, and this morning I was outputting the one where I set up, what was it? I changed over the preamp on Mark's Takamine, his beloved Takamine acoustic. Anyway, it ended up being, you know, actually it wasn't a huge video, but it was a normal full-length Real Love Guitars video. But anyway, there's this thing that happens that when it burns it out, I can see it there, it's exported the film, and I can copy it across to the hard disk that I'll take over to Mark's later on to use and abuse his proper Wi-Fi bandwidth, and then I can delete it. And I've got this stupid habit of deleting in a hurry to make more space, because video files take up a huge amount of space, as you can obviously imagine. So for some reason this thing, although it said it had exported, it hadn't quite finished, and so I can ease it. I went and deleted the files before it had quite finished its business, and as a result I lost it. So that's a whole video gone, and I could kick myself for that, because you know, for customers that's often something they look forward to seeing. And so, I mean, Mark luckily is an ongoing customer, and I'm doing another custom build for him, so he's got plenty of stuff to be watching and looking at on Facebook as I go along. But yeah, it's just annoying to have lost a great chunk of video. I mean, it would be doubly annoying if that's all I did, was make video content, but of course I don't. As you know, this video content is accidental almost to what I do, so it's a bit of a shame, but it's absolutely not the end of the world. But so that was one thing this morning, and the other thing is, when I came into the shed this morning, I was horrified to find Mark's T7 custom that I'm building, we're currently building, and I'm currently waiting for some Minwax lacquer finish to arrive, so I can refinish the neck. Now I've done the full refret and reshaping and everything, so it's just waiting for that to arrive, which has had to come from the States. And I hung this body up, here it is. I came in this morning and found it on the floor, and it's a nice thing, obviously, and it's going to be beautiful when it's finished. And I've recently done this kind of repair with this, what do you call it, U veneer. So it's in perfect. It's just perfectly got it to where I want to get it to. Just going to redo the neck and then carry on sanding this to perfection, install the hardware and do all the bits and bobs. But this was on the floor and the string was off it, and it literally had somehow untied itself overnight and fallen to the floor. And thankfully, it had dropped on the rubbish bin, which had been leaning over on its side, and therefore provided a larger target, target area for the thing to fall on. It dropped onto the full waste bin over there, which is padded and laid flat to make a bigger target, and done no damage whatsoever. So I'm so relieved, but it was absolutely horrifying. It's like the thought of a whole commission just going up in smoke because of a stupid, I don't know, a knot that just undid overnight. Anyway, enough of that. So what we're looking at is inside of here we've got the gubbins of Simon's Tokai Firebird, and you can see we have miniature pots in here, and I've gone and bought non-miniature, large scaly logarithmic pots for the volumes. So there's quite a lot of unhooking and unstitching to do here. Not a major kerfuffle, but my first thing is, please let there be enough room to fit these little fellas. So there should be. That's my only thought. Anyway, so I'm going to have to unhook all the hookups to these pots. It's a pretty standard arrangement, actually, typical Chinese wiring schema, and nothing here to kind of worry me really. Standard Les Paul type wiring, Chinese style. So it's interesting to see that the pots have sort of turned round over time, and also within that whole thing, so I think has the switch, which lives at the top here, and it's hidden under the pick guard. Is that the one that's pointing in odd directions? I can't remember. Anyway, so I'm going to get the soldering iron heated up, get my bits and pieces around, and we'll do a replacement. So that the aim of this replacement job is so that Simon gets a progressive logarithmic style volume adjustment, rather than this kind of rather severe on-off, all goes off when you get down to 2. It's loud, same volume, same audible volume, until you get down to sort of 2 on the dial, and then suddenly it's gone. So we're going to aim to improve that. Now, while I'm at it, I think I want the other thing to stand the microphone on, wherever that's gone. Hello. Where's the microphone stand? Oh, I will have put it somewhere sensible, clever, such that I can't. Aha! There we go. It's a bit clumsy, but it does a fairly good job in the hey, let's look down from above at the wiring game sort of stakes. That's the purpose of it. So I will drag you along here with accompanying noise. Sorry, I do apologise. Round to here, and then sort of hook you up on there and see how it all looks. Good view-ish, enough. You're sort of velcroed on. Anyway, it's better than nout, so you've got a fairly good view. So I'll leave you sort of there. Now, first thing I'm going to do is fire up the Iron of Doom, which is now on. I'm going to put some sticky resin on these bags, so I'm just going to cut them to get the pots out. Oh, what's happening here? Not working properly. Oh, crikey, something's busted. SE. What does SE mean? Please work. What does S and E equal in the error? Please. What could S and E mean? What could S and E mean? Not working. Oh, yeah. Numbers are all over the place. Okay, it's trying to heat up. Is there something wrong with it? Appears to be heating up after a strange error message. I hope it's alright. Please work. I really need you to work. It says 350 degrees. The SE. Was that short circuit E? I don't know. Right. So this is going to be quite a complicated thing, only just for space purposes. There's nothing essentially that weird about it. It's as I say, it's a pretty standard thingy Les Paul type setup, but you can see it's quite a lot of wiring going on in there. So the idea is we're going to take out these two and replace them. Now I know this sounds silly, but personally I always just double check that my yeah, I've got a credible sense of what the heck is going on. I'm going to find the puller of knobs, and I'm going to apply the puller of knobs to this task and remove the knobs. What a great tool. Thank you very much to the kind supporter who sent me these, amongst other groovy little tools. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spin over again. I'm just sort of lightly trying to support the switch. I don't want it pressing too hard into the floor carpety thing. Right, so I'm going to switch to hyper goggles. Get them on, and at the same time pull out, I don't know what that was, tin foil, pull out some solder, pull out the solder suckery thing. Where's the solder sucker gone? Oh no, we certainly need that. Right, that's a bit worrying. Solder sucker, hellfire. Well, we might have to live without it until I locate it again, but meantime we have a few little bits we need. Right, so we have some nice CTS pots of the audio taper style, and we're going to need to fit them in here to do the job that Simon needs. And this is very important, this little task, because this is a key gigging guitar for Simon. So getting this improvement on the roll off of the volume is critical to how he plays in the band. And so this, you know, this isn't just a nicety of, hey, let's put some quality pots in here, man. This is we've got to get these in so that he can play the way he and his band need him to play. Now I've got a little pot of cleaning stuff, which is quite cool. Let's see if the actual iron is heated up at all. Yes. Oh, thank goodness. That's quite encouraging. Stay working, please. Got this nice, I don't even know what this is, but it's a little weird little Chinese concoction that makes a, it's doing this SE again. What could that mean? Don't want to hold this. Now it's 350. We got some sort of short temperatures going all over the place. This thing is not happy. 350, 350, going down temperature, going up, going down. We got the wiring kind of worn out or something. I'm not liking this. SE. I'll have to go online and find out what this darned code means. I've just tightened it up a bit. That's all I can think of doing. Please work for me. I can't. Well, I've got a couple of other spares, but this is my favourite one. I've got used to living with this. Right. So in this game, it's helpful to just for, even though it's a dead simple arrangement, it really helps to know what the heck we're dealing with and what is what. So we've got things coming from different places. So we know this is a neck volume, we know this is a bridge volume. Okay. So on the neck side of things, we've got pickups that come in, go to the top and then go to the middle. Go to the top and go to the middle. So this is these two, which are cloth covered wires, appear. Oh, what are they? Who knows? We've got, crikey. Oh, we've got some strange jumping over. Right, that's a, wow, this isn't a standard wiring. This is possibly going to need me to map this out because I don't quite know what's going on here. So the pickup one, in this case, the bridge pickup is the red cable here with a coil split pair hanging off unused. And this, because this thing is turned all the way back to front, let's get it out so we can actually get a closer look at it. Again, it's quite difficult to move without doing any damage to anything. But if I can just lever it out, we can probably see a bit better what we're dealing with. And it probably makes sense to do a bit of mapping as well. So I'll stand by with a pen, and my new marker pens, and possibly a bit of space somewhere. I can wipe that off. I've done that measurement already. Push that back down. Push these little fellas out. Right. Okay. So we've got, let's see what's in and what's out. Crikey. Right, so we've got the in. Blimey. Can I even see? Right, the in. I actually can't see what is going on here. That is weird. This is a string. This has got me confused. So we've got. Is that cut across there? No. Right. Blimey. Right. I'm going to draw these out because I will get a bit lost if I don't take great care. Because this isn't standard. That's the first thing I can tell you. So I'm going to draw out a couple of pots. So we're going to have. This is neck volume, and we're going to have bridge volume down there. We're going to have 3 lugs on each. It's sticking the way it should be sticking, but current isn't. Right, on the neck volume, we've got what you'd expect, and the same with the bridge. We've got the, I guess it's number 3 lug is grounded in both cases. You'd expect that. Then. So we've got something going to the switch, but we've got an awful lot of stuff going back out, which I don't quite get my head around. So we've got, right, first of all, on lug number 1, we have got number 1 goes straight across to the tone, which is blue. So out of number 1, we've got a blue, which is a white. Actually, it's a blue cable. So out of number 1 on the bridge, we go across to the tone, and at the same time we've also got an earth wire that couples with that, and that goes across to the tone. And we have the same thing happening, but in this case it's a red wire that comes out of, yep, same thing again. So we've got, let's just double check that it is. This is weird. I haven't seen this arrangement before, so obviously I've got to map it, what it's doing. We've got the red from lug 1, lug 1 plus earth goes across in the same way. So we'll use a red. We go red across to tone with a black earth that goes across there as well. That's that bit located, identified. So the blue and the red are sort of taken care of. In fact, I should cut those off. Or should I cut them? Or should I actually? Probably just as easy to cut them looking at how they're attached. So there's the blue on 1, and there's the earth on 1. I've got the wrong, actually got the wrong cutters here, but I'm going to have to make do with it. The other ones are indoors. Okay, come along. It's not actually cutting down to where I need. These are a cheap set, so that's probably why. Let us revert to at least what we can trust, although it's a little bit big. Right, so that's the blue. That's the tone circuit, and then we'll do the same here. That one and that one going to earth, just about there, which is very closely done. Okay, so we know what they are. I'll put them off to one side. Neck tone circuit, or tone loop, we should call it. Bridge tone loop, off to one side. Then we've got a jumper from the across the 2 pots. So we've got, that goes from, that's weird. Why has that got a, that's the bit that's confused me. We've got this spare lead here which doesn't seem to make any sense, and I have to work out. See this little pair, this looks like a leftover from a piece of wire that's been reused, but there's no reason. Oh wait a minute, they're hooked up. Oh right, I get it, and there is a reason. Weird. Right, okay, so from the middle we've got a red wire that comes out and pairs up with, what on earth is going on here? Right, so this doesn't go to, so there's a, it uses the common, there's a common earth that goes across, so there's a red wire that comes out of the middle lug of the neck volume. So red wire comes out of the middle of the neck volume, and with it goes a ground connection which basically grounds the two pots together. But the red wire joins, if I can do that visually, the red wire joins like as a paired bit with a 3-core wire, like, which goes back out to where? Well, that has to be, that's not the pickup, this will be the pickup. So this goes out, is it doing all 3 things at once? Is that what it's doing? I think it is. 1, 2, 3. So that wire with 3 things goes to the switch. Is that what's happening? I think it is. I think that's the case. Then out of the switch comes the jack socket, which is fine. So that one goes, carries all 3 signals. That's what they've done. They've just hooked that up. That's fine. Save on a bit of wiring. So that joins. So we have now a wire which is a 3-core wire with a white that goes, which I can't really draw with my colours. We'll call it orange. So a white goes here to the middle. That's the output of that one. So the output of that one goes, output goes to the switch, and the output of this one joins it because it's paired off, and that's just how they've used it, because that's the kind of wire they happen to have had. And also in that then we've got an earth which goes to the switch as well, which I can draw in as another black one, and that earth comes in and goes to the pot top. So those 3 are all together in a single cable, which is why it looks so strange. So now what we've got is we've got the hot is the white from the neck pickup, and that comes into the middle. So from the neck pickup, here we go, that's the neck plus, and then down here we have the braided cable which comes into the middle, which is the bridge plus. So oh my goodness, bridge plus, let's draw that going into the middle as well, bridge plus. So the only reason this looks a little confusing to me is because it's the guys used a single wire to simplify the job. Actually, that's all he's done. So that then goes to there too. So the bridge plus bridge negative. Right. Okay, so I know what these things are now, which is good. So let me cut that off. Let me cut that off. Let me cut this off. So that's how I have to work things out, because I'm not smart enough to see it all in one go. But I like to be. I think the tip there is that drawing it out is a very good way of talking your way through it, as you saw, so you kind of know what's going on. This in fact, I might want to actually unsolder this one because it's braided and it's, what am I looking for? I've got it out. It's braided, and it should make it easier rather than trying to cut it off. I probably should just pull it off with heat, providing that I can get enough heat from this soldering iron into that pot top. It's not given. We'll rest on the edge of the cavity there to help things along. Okay, yeah, so as a principle, if some of you may be very, very familiar or very comfortable with electronics and just go firing into these things and without having to worry or think, and that isn't the case for me, and I also know quite a lot of other people for whom that isn't the case. So if you are one of those lucky people and you can just see it and do it, then great. But if you're like me and you need to kind of work out what the heck's going on before you get going, then writing it out, drawing it out, so you aid your own understanding. That was a quick release. Aid your own understanding of what's going on. That really helps. So you can see that's kind of ready to be resoldered. I didn't want to have to spend hours shortening this or unpicking that, if I can help it. Okay, so we do need to, next step in this game is we do need to prep up some of these wires. Now look, these are a full-scale guitar, but they're long, so we don't need all of this vintage wire. So I'm going to shorten that back anyway. So we've got clean, a couple of clean ends to work with, and just use my very sharp blade, spinning it around to just cut off the cloth part without weakening the metal core. I don't know if it's a multiple strand one, I think, yeah. So there's my, what I know is my neck pickup pair, and then with this strange little hooky thing. Now, if I don't like this arrangement, then my only choice really is to rewire from the switch back, and quite frankly that's going to be more trouble. So I'm just trying to look and see, is it reasonable to continue this same thing. Now it probably is, but again there's way more wire in here than we actually need. So the first thing that makes sense to do is to cut this back, but we have to recreate this little thing going on here. And again, we can probably use most of the original wire, but we have to sort of get everything ready to work nicely when the time is right, and that also will include tinning some things. Now, you know, here we've lost the important ground shield, which we're going to use as the ground wire, so we have to strip back a little bit on that to get us some of that out to work with, and with a bit of luck we should be able to. Now, having said that, if it doesn't work out, then what we can do is we can always find another 2-core wire, of which we've got quite a bit, and use that. So now that's probably too long. I'll cut me back to there and there. Right, so reasonably tidy refresh. Again, we've shortened it a little bit, but could be fairly confident that it was already too long. It just has to go between the two pots really, but we also have to remember to hook it up to this wire, this strange multi-function wire going out to the switch. So that, again, that's talking it through like that. Even if you're fairly experienced with this, it's a really good way of, as you heard me do there, work out what's going on, because at first things can look really unusual or confusing, and you think, well, oh, I'm lost, I'm completely lost. And if you get lost at that stage and you find yourself trial and erroring, it will take you forever, because you'll just end up putting it all together, finding it doesn't work, putting it all together again, finding it still doesn't work, and so on. So now, if you remember, we come back to this one here, and we're going to strip this back a fair way, and the idea now is we've got to prepare this to do the things it had to do before. So nice load of shielding on the outside, and if we remember the picture, it had the in fact the red core, the red central core, joined up with this other red bit here, and we'll do that, and we'll put a new bit of shrink wrap on it, and I've got a heat gun standing by to do service. So we've got the common earthy bit. We know that one of these red ends here is going to end up connecting, doubling up with this end here, but we also have to get to an earth as well, a common earth, which we could probably do quite neatly there. So we cut this to approximately the same length, so that when we join them up, they're in the same ballpark. And again, we can solder a bit, and then we can also use a bit of shrink tubing to help keep these things isolated from each other. I've not cut enough here. It's going slippery. I've never been good at using those custom made proper wire strippers. It just for some reason doesn't seem to work for me. So I always do it by hand, which can get a little bit funny. Right, so remember we've got really two things we've got to do. This one here is going to meet with that one there and join. So we can just, they're both earths, which is fine. And then this one here is going to meet with that one there, and they're going to be a pair. So if we're in the mood, we could even put a bit of solder on these now to start them off as that pair. If we wanted to plan even better, we could probably get some shrink wrap, you know what I mean, heat shrink. Let's put my rather untidy box of stuff up here, and we'll get some various different sized things and see what we can get away with. Some of this shrink wrap is too big. I don't even know where have I put it? Oh, it's here, staring me in the face. We've got a couple of different sizes. This one's got a really good shrink ratio. Sometimes you have to help them on the way and kind of stretch them out first. But let's start with the biggest one. So let's say we wanted a bit of joining wire here, not too much, but a bit. And what we could do is we could put all of these through here, if we can. I don't know how well you can see that. All of those through there. Bring that down on there, and then sort of out that side. Now that's probably actually a little bit too much. You might put too much pressure on it, so let's reduce that. Just the purpose of this is not really to sheathe it off for any insulation purposes, but just to kind of keep it together so that we know what's what. So now we have a couple of things we know we've got to tin to join them together, so we can just do that. So there's our first tinning or joining of our pair, which we can cut short when the time is right, and then we'll join these two together down here, which is where they matter, and go along there. So that's two, and just for perfection's sake, snip that one a bit and cut that one back too, because that doesn't have to be so big. Then we can have a little bit of this, but again only a tiny bit really, to make a heat shrink to go over the top of this one. To kind of, that's really just all it's trying to do there is be a continuation, so that this output from the bridge volume pot, this output goes to the, what am I talking about? Hang on a minute, let's just get this. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm just using this wire trapped inside of this white 3-core cable just as a thing to hold it together. So it's a transport device basically. And I'm using it mainly because they've already wired it in, and to do a different way would require taking off the leather pick guard and hoiking the whole switch out and rewiring it. So since it's not been a problem, and it ain't broken, don't fix it type of thing, it might make sense just to carry on as is. Right, and that's got a bit of a blob on the end, which we don't really want, so I'll snip that off. That's dropped in there, which we also don't want, so come out, thank you. Okay, so now I need to get a bit of a lead on the end of here. So at the moment I haven't pulled out the heater gun for doing any heat shrinky things, but I will need to at some point. So I'll sort of try and save them all up so we can do them all in one go. So there's another little bit of tinning needed doing. Again, stick with it until you've got them all twisted, rather than If you don't, you'll end up with a sort of sprayed paintbrush effect, which will be hard to work with. And I saw that the soldering iron is now flashing at me again. It's going down in temperature, going up in temperature. What the hell has happened? Has it come loose here or something? Doesn't seem to like being put back in this holder at the moment. Oh, it's going down, going up, going down. It's a bit sensitive, temperamental. Right, so, and there's my little pair which I'll heat up and sort out. Right, okay, so we know that's that. Now we've got these things we want to prepare, clean up the ends. Now in doing this, obviously we're going to have to handle them, which is always a risk, because in handling these things you can end up with a break at the other end while you're moving this around to prepare the ends for soldering. So we have to just kind of be willing to, or be prepared to have a good look at it once we've prepped the ends, to make sure that we're not disconnected down at this end here. And again, clean these up, tin them off, and then get ready to do the whole reassemble. Again, trying to keep the amount of movement down to a reasonable minimum. And you know, it's one of the things I've often talked about, and that is that movement is the enemy of all things electric guitar wiring. And please work. I like this thing. It's a really nice little unit. Yeah, so with that in mind, it's worth always remembering, if something goes wrong in your guitar, there's a cutout of any kind, always begin with the thing that moves most as your prime suspect. So if you think about it, the thing that's going to move the most, believe it or not, is the jack socket, because it's usually under quite considerable levering force because of the design. There are some rare or notable exceptions, like some of the S series, for Ibanez guitars, for example, and the Strat actually, but even that comes undone and falls apart. But you know, the S series Ibanez guitars have a sort of slanted, almost tucked away jack plug entry point, and which means that the levering forces on that socket are minimized, and as a result it tends to hold together for a lot longer before you get any kind of mechanical splittings going on. But on a SG or even a Firebird like this, wherever the socket sticks out at a straight line away from the body, you will get the most levering forces on it, and it will most likely to wear something away. Now this is a little bit tricky, because what one was this? This is the bridge pickup hot and earth. This is a little bit tricky because it's all gummed up here, and I'm a bit worried because there's some earth wire wrapped around here, so anything I cut back here I'm going to end up getting a short. So I'm going to take an unusual step of cutting that right back, and I'm going to trust that we've got enough. I know that we've got enough, and I'm going to reopen up this so I can make sure that this shielded wire, which we're going to use as the ground, is well away from the hot or the positive wire from the pickup, because otherwise we're forcing the two things together, and their likelihood of a short is increased, and it will happen as and if and when the pot moves under, you know, heavy usage, and you find it gets turned round and then it rams these two bits together, and then suddenly you've got a tiny little join short, or an intermittent short, which is even more annoying, and then before you know it, your thing's gone off in mid play. So it's kind of critical. Now, so I've separated them out, created myself quite a bit more lead, and I'm going to just tin this off first and then cut back the live bit, the live wire from that. Now some people kind of like to just use the it kind of just blob onto the braiding, and it does work. You've got enough temperature resistance of the inner cloth part, but to me it just feels a little bit unnecessary. I'd rather use a spur of coiled, you know, a tin spur of wire like this, in order to keep it as much as I need to away from the live core, because like I say, I don't want to run any chances of getting these two things kind of mixed up. That's a guaranteed gig killer. Okay, keep on working. Keep on working. Okay, so now we have our strange little spur thing over there, which we know what it's for. It's now no longer a threatening and confusing mess. We've still got to do some stuff with our heating, shrinking. Probably makes sense to do that bit now, before it gets too congested, and while we can hold it up like this and keep the heat away from everything else. So, still with my magnifier specs on, we will grab the heat gun. And this was a really cool investment, this was. I'm so pleased to have this. And I'm just going to shoot away from the car body naturally. And when you use it, it'll be hot. So have yourself a very merry cooling off system. Now this is usually hanging free, so in your cooling off system have another peg where this can hang up out of the way of the hot bit. Oh, I've just unplugged the wrong thing. Holy Moses. That's what happens when you put on your grandfather's glasses to do soldering, and then you can't see to pull out things. Anyway, right, so there's a bit of shrunken, everything's ready to go. So we'll just hoik this off to the side, clearing out the space. There's our jack plug lead from the switch, and there's our bridge pickup wires. Now, before we go any further, we have to prep these two. Now they're both A pots and they're log taper. So again, this is something that you don't have to do if you've got a brilliant memory, but I never do. So I'm going to go, hey, neck volume, just for my own benefit so I don't get completely confused. Bridge volume. Now the first thing I'm going to do is get some wire, some spare wire from somewhere. And I'm just going to want to strip out a bit of something. I can never figure out which I'm going to use. Just need a little bit of bare wire. Could be anything, for goodness sakes. Just prefer a little bit of stiff wire, but as luck would have it, I can't actually find it. Can I have? Ah, here it is. Here's a bit of stiff wire. Put those back in there. Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this thing. I'm going to put the earth jumper onto each of the pots. So we'll start with the neck volume. These things just do not grip, they're hopeless. I complain about this all the time. I want a new one. So we know that in our diagram the third one of each is going to be a ground thing. So first thing I can do, in fact I get both of them up here at the same time. Bridge and neck. Grip it, please. Neck and bridge. Right, there we have them. So first thing we're going to do is put some solder onto here ready to grab things. So I could look at the original pots and see how many they used, or I could just chuck a bunch on and in confidence that I'll use them. So I'm pretty confident that I'm going to need about 3 on each pot, and it's just handy to have this ready to go before I go anywhere and get into fitting them into the cavity, because it just gets tighter once you put it in there, harder to manoeuvre. So, and you know, some people will get very upset if you've got excessive numbers of blobs of solder on top of your pots, and that's fine, but there's no harm in having more bits of solder on there than you needed. If it in any way aided you to get the job done, then why not? You know. And of course there is a whole thing that people love about the aesthetics of soldering too, which can lead them to make those kind of judgments. So I'm just twisting, well, I was just twisting this around with a view to make it hang in there. Now it's not going to do that, so there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can just pull it through far enough and first of all attach. Oh, stop telling me SE, you don't mean that. Whatever that means. We're just going to load the eyelet and solder in this little bit of wire like that on that one. And put that back in there, and hopefully it's not going to say SE. Now you could load the eyelet beforehand as well. Some people find that easier, so it doesn't drop out like that, but I usually can get it to do what I want. There you go. I'm not particularly trying to save wire here, I'm just getting it to wherever it will work best and then doing the join. Now currently that's going to need cropping off this end for starters, and bend it up at this end and crop it as well whilst it jumps out into your arms. Okay, now we're going to go for attaching here, and kind of helps if you bend it up to make it as easy as possible to crop it afterwards. So get with a start with a sort of pre-bend helps. And how well you can see, this soldering iron is definitely complaining a bit, so something's odd's happened to it. You can see how not having a good gripper is just a major hassle actually. You can go down to the ground if you can, place some, see, like it just will not even grip the size of pot correctly. So if you can help it, get it onto the ground where you can put some pressure on it and get the heat transferred. And if it doesn't work first off, then see, look, it's going to drop out. Whatever I do now, it's going to fall on the ground. So sometimes you need an extra hand just to hold the thing there while the solder sets like that. But note to self, I must buy a decent grabbing thing helper, because this is just, look, it's just, oh, it's puny. We need proper sized gripping things. Gee, damn it. No, it's going to fall off again. So you end up, it'd probably be better if I had some sort of plasticine. Oh, I've used it for weight relief, weight ballast, but you know, even that, stick them in plasticine or something just to hold them while you do this kind of work, because it's just loopy that you're working with such flimsy grips. So you get the thing there and you're sort of vaguely heating that up, and then you just push that across and you keep pressing the heat down and you hope that it takes, and then you hold it there and okay. And that's that. Then you take these darned things, clip off the excess like that. See, it transfers a lot of heat, but not the way you want it to. Right, so everything after this is mainly going to be soldering inside the cavity. So the one thing I like to do is, if I have a chance, I like to just lever that ground lug a bit to one side, and the same with the others. Just, they don't hurt to be spread apart a little bit more if you're careful. You know, the more room you've got between them, the better or the less likelihood you're going to get some ground out. So neck volume is going to want to sit through. Now the first thing I can tell you is that this is not going to be the right size hole for this pot. So we're going to have to enlarge it using our reamer. Is that what it's called? I've forgotten what this thing's called. But again, right in the middle of your soldering, suddenly, oh no, I can't fit the pots. So just double check it. No, it's too small, so we're going to have to enlarge them. Now that commits you, quite obviously, to working with that size pots from now on in, but it's not likely that we're going to go backwards from this. Yeah, nearly there. A little bit from the other side, tiny bit from this side, and a little bit more from the other side. We should be alright. Very handy little tool, cheap as chips. There you go. Actually goes fine on both. And a thin, relatively thin base. Don't flash numbers at me, you piece of junk. What's going on with it? SE? Is it the power supply at the back? 40 or something? 27 going up? Something's wrong, and I don't know what it is. Okay, so we're back to where we were before. Right, balance, everything good. Back down. Oh, SE, what's wrong with you? 350. Down in temperature, going up in temperature. Down, up, down. Screwed. Damn it. Okay, so we gather our regain our senses. Oh, what am I looking at here? This right. That's the bridge ground. Goes to the top of the tone pot over there. Now we've got so little room in here. Now we're going to have to squeeze this one underneath these wires. That means sort of lifting them out of the way, so we just fit in, and that's good. And we want this facing outwards, so we get our. First of all, we'll have a look and see how much is poking through. Actually, that's pretty good. We don't want to shorten that in any way, so we'll just lightly attach this first. Just keep it in place, actually, and make sure that when you do it up, it's away from, wherever possible, away from the edge, the shielded edge of the cavity, because that's another common thing that can happen is as these pots spin round with age, they end up colliding, or a live pot, live lug, ends up colliding with the shielded cavity wall, and then you get a short out, which is no good to you. So it's a pretty, you have to plan. You see, you've got a situation here where if anything moves between these two, they will collide, and you'll get a short out. So it's quite tricky. We can, at the end of it, just as a fail-safe or precaution against the possibility of these pots moving in future, which you're in trouble if they do anyway, but as a sort of last-ditch fail-safe, we can put a piece of foam or tape, Gorilla Tape or something between them. These aren't the right. These are not. That's not the right thing. Yeah, we can put some foam and some tape between them, just to so they'll bounce off if they should so ever move. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I was often tempted to use a bit of thread lock on here too, but I don't these days, because actually for thread lock to actually do its job effectively, it also becomes so permanently fixed, really, that when you do, if somebody does come to change things over, they have to destroy the pot to get it out, and if they don't know that's the case, it can be quite disheartening. Right, so let's take this logically now. We've got our cute little mixture here, but that doesn't mean we do that one first. What I want to do is just hook this grey jack lead out of harm's way first, just to kind of keep it at a arm's reach. Now, so we've got these jumpers, the tone jumpers, and I think I'm going to do those first, because once I do those, I can be confident that they're also intact, which is what's important, that in all this handling, you know, they haven't sort of come undone, because they've got quite a bit of movement, and the tones are going to stay where they stay. So let's again put this curious thing off to one side, and we'll just concentrate on the tone hookups. Now the tone hookups share, do they share? No, in this case the tone hookups occupy lug number 1 alter themselves. So the nice thing about tones is we can come through from the front, hook them up at the front, and then press or solder down the ground going in the opposite direction, so that it keeps them pretty nicely apart. Now please, Mr. Soldering iron, don't go into your SE. Now this problem with this now, only slight problem, is that it starts to move and it slips just a bit further into the lug than I want it to. So I'm trying to get it to sit just out. I don't want to melt loads of plastic while I'm doing this join, but that's what we seem to get if we're not careful. So we'll get some solder onto this now. I think my soldering iron's now playing up again. So that's nicely on. Staying at, no, temperature's falling again. Rubbish. What is wrong with you, you stupid machine? This is not good. Right, so we've now got, that's now attached. We now have a piece of leftover which I want to snip off. I probably should go and get the other snippers because I'm reaching into a tight space to do these trims. Now once that's done, we can now take off this little holder because it's no longer necessary, and we're now going to go with this ground wire to a convenient piece of solder on the top there. Now this is often going to be the difficult bit because this soldering iron isn't the best at transferring heat to the top of a pot, so it could be a while getting this to heat things up enough. It really doesn't seem to like doing it. Get it down there, but sometimes it needs extra solder to conduct the heat. That seems far too long to want to be really holding that on, but once it gets the heat through a fresh bit of solder, we're aboard. So that one's done. Just stay where you are, numbers. Okay, then we get the second jumper, which again is probably too long at the moment, so we can cut a bit of that off. And then remember that that goes into lug number 1. And again, we just want to hold it somewhere where it's going to be just in the right sort of distance to solder it in, but not melt all the plastic wire, which is kind of there to sheath it and shield it, I guess. Actually isolate it, insulate it is probably the word I'm looking for, damn it. Okay, and if you can't get that right, then just load the thing up. I moved it at the last minute, damn it. Okay, stay. Darn thing. Right, now I'm going to take off the excess here with this rather clumsy tool, and then we will unhook that and we'll go to attach this. And I think I'm going to go right to the back end of this pot for this, if I can reach it with the heating thing, otherwise known as soldering iron. Okay, there we have it. And the difficulty is this is kind of nose onto it, so it's really not transferring much in the way of heat. So I've tried to add a bit more solder to help the transfer of heat a bit more. It really doesn't want to play ball. On top of that, the whole thing is moving, and I'm close to the edge of the cavity too, so the whole thing, oh, we're going down in temperature now, come on. This doesn't help. No, down in temperature, up in temperature. This is a bit now, I'm really getting nowhere with this. It's saying 350, but so everything about this tool is getting hot except the pot that I'm pressing it onto. Temperature's fluctuating a little bit as something goes wrong. Oh, rubbish. I'm going to have to bin this. Oh well. Okay, so next one. Now we've got the curious case of what we've got to come out the middle. We've got lots of different things to come out the middle. So let's go to the input. And the input shares, the input in each case shares a hole, shares a lug with the switch. So that's interesting. How can that be? It does though. Neck input goes to the switch. Neck goes in and out of the same. That's the weird thing. I'm wondering if the crapness of that volume sweep is because of the wiring of this. I mean, I'm following this wiring blindly, like it was any good. Let me just think about this. This is going in. No, it should still work. Should still work. The input. Now this is where I'm just looking at that, thinking, should it work? So this is the output stage of things, right? So what we've got on the output stage is, and the output stage, this is what's peculiar about this. The input and the output share the same lug, which is odd, to say the least. I've not seen that before. I don't know why, it offends my sense of logic. But the idea here is we're going to bring, we have to combine, in this case, the neck pickup plus, which is this white one here, comes round here and doubles into the middle lug like that. But it also shares a home in that respect with this one here, top one. So these two are actually one. So they actually could be twisted together if they will go. And that'll save a bit of moving around when we're trying to solder it. But this, I have to say, I've got my antenna flashing here because this seems illogical to me, Captain, that they're sharing the same lug. It seems to make sense to me that you have an input and then an output, which is the result of the movement of the pot. To have these two on the same lug, so the input attaches to a lug but also jumps out and goes straight to the switch, makes me wonder how this can work. But hey, let us trust in some sense that it can. Now, while I'm doing this, I'm about to make the mistake of going the wrong way because we have to get this bit here to earth, top of the pot. So we have to come this way, as with other things, to the pot. And then we clear those out of the way, like that. And we should, actually probably need to bend this upwards a bit more. Pull this through. We should get a clean run at soldering that. If the soldering iron will play ball. That's a nice big cluster. Now, I'm nervous about this, so I'm going to leave. I'm not going to chop this short for a second until I'm convinced this works, because it seems just weird. So I've got another piece here that's now got to go to ground as well, which goes to the back of there. So I've got to get this chap out of the way for a minute. And I've also got a ground here that needs to go to ground, which could go on the same thing if I could just hook them together without stressing things too much. It's actually quite difficult now. Basically run out of room to move. Could load this up in a pre-tinned go. Sort of. It's a funny connection, not ideal. And then we take this whole chunk over here and convince it. Oh, crap. Convince it to adhere to the top of this pot. But it doesn't, again, it doesn't transfer heat very well, so it doesn't really want to do it. Come on, please. We're still at 350, which is a pleasant surprise. But it's just not, it's not transferring enough heat, which is somewhat galling. It's not a big enough surface, I don't think. Come on. We need to attach this. Come on, heat. Danger of melting nearby wires, that's the real problem of this. Okay, that is attached. So we're grounded there, blah blah blah, lovely. We can get this thing out of the way. Now we have, we'll tidy these up, press them down. Now we're going to come in here with these two, which go into the same place. So this is similar game to the previous one. The two join together and go in the same lug, which just feels wrong on every level, but I'm going to have to do it because that's what it says. Ow! So for that I will also pre-join those two. Technically it probably makes sense to pre-join the grounds as well, because they're going to go into a shared place. Temperature going down, temperature coming back up. Now once again, this is also going to need to come in from the back, leaving the two grounds to go to the top of the pot. So come on please, through the eye of the needle. And now that, of course, isn't going to want to sit where I want it to sit in order to make the lug connection. Well, always check your passage inwards. Make sure you can get in without melting a nearby wire. Okay, so that is that, and now we have actually two bits of ground wire to finally put in. I'm going to do them separately because it's so difficult to transfer heat at the moment. So the first one is I'm going to add some solder to hopefully help the process along, and that's going to be a two-stage thing. First bit with the iron alone, and hopefully the second bit, stupidly, with this device here, which should help me a bit. Again, it's not shedding that heat through properly. Come on, you can do it. Keep going. Right, and then one more earth wire to connect up, and it's this braided one here. And then we will have rewired according exactly to the original wiring. Now, for all I know, that could have been a bad mistake, because I'm just going with what this thing had. And of course, one of the things that Simon's assumed, it could be right in assuming it, but we could be on hiding to nothing. He's assumed that the poor volume performance, i.e. it's sort of monolithic drop-off as opposed to a smooth logarithmic roll-off, we've both assumed that that's caused by there not being the correct kind of pot in use. Now it could be the case, but it could also be due to this, I think, idiosyncratic wiring. Now I'm trying to get a good joint here with all of this solder, but it's so difficult to get the heat into the whole piece without melting everything else in sight. I think that will hold. Right, so that is the wiring done. Now, of course, the first quick check we're going to make before I do anything with snipping off. Shake out the bits is always a good start. Before I cut any of the excess bits off, is I want to do a check, plane check, obviously. Oh yes, it's like missing of some strings. Now, despite missing some strings, very cunningly, I anticipated this little problem some time ago, and as a result I made something to help just such a situation. And in fact, it's tied up here in a way that I can't actually get it out. Oh, I didn't plan, did I? Right, let's put all of this down here, like I need to rearrange all my templates, and let us try to get this useful little tool. My little temporary That's interesting. That really is interesting. I've just taken out that exact thing and it's actually playing back to front. Don't need that, I don't need that, please. I don't need that. Just give me a sound. First of all, that's back to front. Oh man, I don't like this wiring. I copied that exactly and it's back to front. This can't be possible. So, let's just get this right. That is the controlling. So that's controlling that. Okay, it's the out to the switch I got wrong. That is the neck pickup. We know that. And the neck pickup controls are working that. So the neck pickup goes to the neck pickup as expected. Do I find that any more logarithmic than before? To be honest. Marginally. Okay, so what's gone wrong here is, or what we can say is, the pickups go to the correct pots. That's a good sign. But what's wrong is the outputs are reversed. So the bit I've gone, so the bit that goes out, the funny little doofer here, this thing here, I've put to the wrong, put to the wrong places. So. Oh, God. So I'm going to go and get my fine cutters because I can't do it with this thing. So I'm just going to switch the outputs to the switch around, and then we'll have it the right way. So hold on a sec. Right, just did a quick bit of rewiring and we're on track. Hurrah! Now the only bit, having done all of that, the only bit that slightly worries me with this guitar is this original wiring system in the first place. You know, whether it's actually any good or not. It strikes me as odd, but I'm not gonna pronounce on it because I don't know. It just seems a weird thing to be connecting the input and the output to the same thing, same lug. And that's weird in my book, but I could be wrong and I don't know much about electronics, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if I was wrong. Anyway, we shall see. But we've got the right pots, and we'll get the best performance as is possible. And if it isn't that, then if the volume doesn't have a more progressive effect, then I'll put it out to my resident clever people and see if it's something to do with that slightly peculiar wiring, as far as I can see. Right, I'm going to turn this chap off so we can relax the unhappy soldering iron, and then we'll do a bit of tidy up, and I'll come back for the dust down and restring in a minute. Yeah, weird. So, magical tidy up coming. Okay, here we are back again with the Firebird. Wiring done, knobs back on, and it's time to string her up. Or should I say restring. Okay, yes, we need some tens. Yeah, 46, thank goodness. A set of tens. I knew I had some somewhere. Okay, so get ready to cut strings short. So once I get this done, then it's time to get the video download. No, I'm back to front. Oh God, I hate this tune. Can I say I hate this headstock from the outset here? Yes, so we'll get this done, and I'll get the video quickly compiled, but not so quickly that I lose the video like I did this morning with another one. And then we'll zip across to Mark's in Plymouth for probably a bit of a jam, as well as uploading some videos. And the fun part will be trying to log in over his place with my Google ID, because bizarrely I have to try and remember the password, which always gets a bit difficult. And then it's got this new system now that it likes to send a confirmation. Instead of typing in your password, it asks you to pick up a message that it sends you. What in the hell am I doing? I'm doing this back to front. Hi, am I doing this? Well, wait a minute, I'm going backwards here. This is all along the wrong side. All along the watchtower. Egypt. Come on, Samuel. Can't get this wrong, chum. What a strange configuration. Back to front headstock. Don't like it. Just makes restringing an absolute pain. 20 degrees in this little reloved workshop. So getting warm. Long way. Towards me, towards me, towards me. Get under there. Yes, so then after I've got my videos uploading, then it's back home, and we've got a family weekend coming up, so I'll be looking forward to a bit of a gap, well, maybe a bit of time off guitar work, unless it's tweaking a few of my own projects. And then I've actually got a digging project at the weekend. I've got to dig my stepmom's, well, my stepmom and dad's, my dad and stepmom's new house. She's had both a load of work done, but a couple of the bathrooms redone, and turned into wet rooms because my dad's had a stroke and needs that. And in part of that, during the process of that, the bath was taken out of one of the bathrooms, and it was absolutely humongous sized thing, and she didn't want that size of bath, so it was going to go to the tip until she realised that it could be a sort of foundation for a new fish pond. I mean, it really is huge. So as a little project, the family, the boys of the family, have to club together and dig a hole big enough to put the thing in. It's going to be no mean feat. Thankfully, it'll be still, the ground will still be relatively soft at the moment. We haven't got to that dry as a bone summer stage yet, but it's yeah, it's going to take some digging, so we're going to do that off and on over the weekend. So my stepbrother and my half brother will be down to help with the work. It is quite an amazing amount of work that she's done to this house since they moved in, and you know, that alongside moving a severely handicapped husband is quite some achievement. I never actually thought we'd get him to agree to move in the first place, but we somehow gave him no choice or something. But anyway, we got them down here, and it's been really good. I get called on regularly to go and help with DIY things, but that's not so bad. I just have to kind of tell my stepmom that I have to wait until a certain guitar is finished or until I get a break. But okay, so here we are, restringing with 10s, coming close to completing this. We'll need to stretch out the strings and then at the end of it check the intonation as well. Now I think I'm not really going to be in a very good position to judge the operation of these pots. I mean, they are definitely log audio taper log pots, and I'm hoping that they make a tangible improvement for Simon in gigging this guitar. And if they don't, then the only thing I can suggest is to maybe we'd have to re-look at that wiring, because it just looks odd to me the way that's done. Can't be sure of it, but it doesn't seem right. But it works. I mean, the point is that the tone pot and the volume pot work the way it's wired up, so it can't be so wrong that it's not functioning. So, you know, and if it is functioning, then what sort of grounds am I suggesting that it might affect the way in which the pot works? Because I don't think that's the case. I think that the pot has, you know. Anyway, it's either working or it isn't as an audio taper. Right, so I'm just going to put back on these. I'm going to sneeze now. Darn it. Put back these on. Lining up to sneeze. Now, where was the longer one? These are the three. Perhaps I'm not going to do that. Perhaps I'll stick with 3 small ones. No, so that's why, because obviously the top one is bigger than that. See? That isn't that, so it was the bigger one. Trust what you took off to go back on. Let's get a bit of a note going. Oh, Okay. Feels odd, this guitar. It's an unusual shape, that's the only reason why. Ah, that doesn't help. Okay, remember D. Better. That's definitely better. So, given that the bridge posts will have moved around a little bit, I just want to check on the action one more time. And we've got 1.5 and plays 2.2, 1.2. So we have a fraction up, we've gone up a fraction here, so I'm going to bring this down just a tiny tweak and give it some more tugs. Stretch it out. And tune it again. And then we'll go into the intonation. Oh, come on. A and D both creaked a bit, so we'll need to get the sandpaper on those slots. Can't feel that chip anymore. Right, I'm happy with that. Let's now do an intonation test. Let's see what we've got. It's all good. Good, all done and sorted and done. Perfectly intonated, I kind of expect from a musician like Simon. But there we have it, new 10s, frets levelled, new logarithmic volume knobs fitted, with a slight detour for getting the outputs wired the wrong way round. Shows how easy it is to do it, even when you plan carefully and get it all worked out on paper, or in this case on the board. And actually that's the correct thing. I drew it out and then I wired them, two of them the wrong way around. But there you go, can't even say it, but that's what happened. So I'm done for now. Both Simon's guitars going back in their bags, back in the house, ready to go, ready to hand over actually on Sunday, so pleased to see that. Oh, and also we'll send these back as well, these vintage originals.